Hello and welcome everybody to what's gonna presumably be a very, very long video. And it's an unpleasant one for sure, but it has to be addressed and it has to be mentioned. What's going on? In the past couple of weeks, in the past 2 weeks more or less, word has been going around that in the tournament Rcadia World Series, there was a match between Starbuck and Scars that might have been influenced by matchfixing. This has been going around the discords and social medias of the scene. As the figure in the scene that I am in the small pond, and as the tournament organizer of the Rcadia World Series, obviously this caught my eye. This is very interesting, and we have to investigate this. And this is exactly what I did. So what I want to do in this video is to tell you guys, what is all this about? What are the circumstances? What are the accusations? And what's the result of this investigation? What is right and what is wrong? Maybe. So this is what we do. And I have no idea how long this is gonna go, because there was a lot of talks with several people on several sides of this argument and this discourse. But let me start with a disclaimer. Before we go into the nitty-gritty and before I explain what everything is about. In the Warcraft 3 scene in general, and also in this controversy, nobody involved is educated or trained in PR. Nobody's wording is perfect. Some parts of what we present is part of private conversations where you act more loosely than in a press conference, for example. Nobody has a manager behind him, really, that puts things into writing, or a PR manager, I guess. And also, a lot of the players involved are not native English. So let's keep in mind that wording might be imperfect. This goes for universally for everyone involved in what I present here today. End of disclaimer. What caused this all to blow up? I guess the big fire was started by X-Lord. He tweeted on June 20, how come that Starbuck tried to match-fix his own games at Raraland, which got revealed by his own team manager, Don Slash, and is still able to play any tournaments as well as ladder and doesn't get cancelled by the community, nor Warcraft 3 champions, and back to Warcraft, with the tags to the two. That blew the whole thing up, but this wasn't the first time this was mentioned. But before we go into more media clips, more tweets, etc., we should probably address what this is all about. Rcadia World Series was a tournament at my event Raraland that we held in Hamburg in October last year. It was a big tournament, $10,000 on the line, players from all over the world. We are here now on the second day of this tournament. Scars and Starbuck are both playing for the same team, the Playing Ducks. They are both in the round-robin group stage in the round of 12. And they play against each other as the last game of the group stage. Here I want to make a little cut and comment on why this is even possible. Because the fact that two players from the same team play against each other in the last game of the group stage is bad. That's a tournament organizer's fault. That is my fault. And I take that upon me 100%. I still want to give a little bit of context why this was possible to happen, not as an excuse, but as a little bit of an explanation. This event was more or less sticks glued together with like duct tape. We had very little workforce and a lot to do. For example, for these games in the group stage, we had games on a stage, on a real stage that was also broadcasted with the players on stage against each other. Usually, the players were in the main hall of this event, so if they had a stage match, we had to grab their PC, from the ground floor up to the first floor, set it up on stage, and then bring it back for the games that come after. With very little workforce, we set the rule that one player is always playing 2 matches on the stage, so we only and only one player is getting replaced, so we only have to replace one player on the 2-player stage to have half the work, basically. Also, since offline events at Warcraft 3 are such a rare occasion, we wanted to give everyone the chance to play on stage and enjoy the spotlight, more or less. So we prioritized that over making sure that teammates are not playing against each other at the last stage of the group stage. So what's the situation in the group stage? At this point, Scars is already eliminated. Starbuck, according to the popular belief at the event, still has a chance to advance if he wins 2-0, because we had the system that we also now have in ESL Germany, that with a 2-0 win, you get 3 points. With a 2-1 win, you get 2 points. So if you win without losing a map, you get a point more than if you just win. The players know this. The players also know it, or the popular opinion is that with every other result than a 2-0, Starbuck is also eliminated, just like Scars is already. So, they play the match. The result is 2-1. Therefore, Starbuck is eliminated, Lawlight, Zoan, and Sok advance. This is the first time ever, by the way, in competitive Warcraft, that Scars is taking a map off of Starbuck. So, with that said, we have one of the very few facts in this entire controversy. And the fact is that the result of that match didn't benefit any of the players, and therefore we can conclude that the outcome of this match was never successfully fixed or manipulated. This does not mean, I want to make this pretty clear, this doesn't rule out the possibility of an attempted match fix. And this is what we're discussing here. We have to make a clear cut. Was there was no successful match fixing, but was there attempted match fixing? And obviously, that is very hard to prove. I want to make another little disclaimer that throughout this entire week, 10 days, there was never any accusations of betting or bribing or even money involved by no one, if my memory is correct. So, with that said, you know the very basic setup. So how come X-Lord knows this? And X-Lord tweets this? Well, as I said before, he is not the origin of this, but the first time this was discussed is on a German stream called Flutschfinger WC3. There's 2 people in this video. At the top, it's Nase, and at the bottom, it's Flutschfinger. They host a show called Creep Camp Royale, which is basically a podcast-esque format about the German community league Creep Camp. As they are deeply involved in that, they put a spotlight on this. And they also cover some developments in the scene in general. In this case, they discuss Stormgate and the team Phantom Aces, which was recently founded, with also goals to do good in Warcraft 3 and then transition to Stormgate when the time arrives. And there, Nase says the following in German. I will translate this afterwards.
Jetzt komme ich zum Negativen.
Komm zum Negativen. Jetzt sag mal was Negatives auch. Hallo Benji.
Ich verstehe nicht, wenn man Jannis ist, warum man sich Starbuck auf der... das Positive habe ich gerade genannt.
Ja.
Sehr skillig.
Ja.
Hat einen relativ, für Warcraft 3 Verhältnisse, erfolgreichen Stream. Aber nun gibt es ja diese eine Geschichte auf Raraland, dass er anscheinend Matchfixing betreiben wollte.
Ja.
Und warum man sich der in deinem eigenen Turnier betrügen wollte, so ist es ja, betrügen wollte,
Ja.
Warum man den sich ins Boot holt, verstehe ich nicht. Entweder hat man es nicht gewusst oder es ist einem scheißegal. Und wenn es einem scheißegal ist, dann muss ich sagen, dann ist mir das Team auch scheißegal, weil dann ist alles scheißegal.
Ja. Und jetzt kommen wir so.
Okay, that is the clip. That is basically the start of all the public discourse. I'm going to paraphrase this in the translation. So Nase, the guy at the top, says, I don't understand how Neo can put Starbuck on his team when Starbuck tried to cheat at Neo's event. Either Neo didn't know or he doesn't care. So, first and foremost, there seems to be a public belief that I am heavily involved in the Phantom Aces, that it's more or less my team. I want to say, I had not so much to do with the founding of that team as many other believe. I have no executive function in that team. What I had to do with it is that the team idea was presented to me. I gave my opinion on a few things. There's a lot of people on that team that I like. And I said, you can always reach out to me if you want my opinion, if you have any questions. I can be a counselor, associate, advisor of sorts. We also loosely agreed to work on some content together, broadcasting some tournaments, also very loosely discussed some video formats for when Stormgate comes out. But at no point was I aware of serious match-fixing allegations. While we're at the topic, I did know that Starbuck didn't want Scars on the team. That was, I think, late April, with the explanation that he doesn't see him as a fit, but there was no mention of Raraland. And then, obviously, I know that Scars joined the team in June while talking things out with Starbuck. I am on their Discord, and we talk, but that's pretty much about. I have no stakes in that team. I'm not doing any decision in that team. I didn't pick players in that team. None of that was I involved in. So that's already wrong. But this is where a bigger audience was made aware, I would say. So that clip and the discussion about that clip was sent to the German Warcraft podcast Podlust. That podcast is created by Slash, Fishy, Tamtam, and Hex. 3 of them were also part of Playing Ducks at one point, the former team of Starbuck and Scars. Maybe I have to mention that the Phantom Aces is the team of Starbuck and Scars now, but we'll get into all this. Slash is more or less the host and the main figure of that podcast, and he's also the former team manager of the Playing Ducks and was at the time the player manager for the Phantom Aces. He was also affiliated with me. He's casting ESL Germany with me, and we also do the German show Creepjack together. I know this guy for a long time. Slash is casting on and off since the mid-2000s, maybe even earlier. As a person, as a personality, he's very outspoken, to put it mildly. He's a very controversial figure in the German community. A lot of people hate him. A lot of people love him. There's very little in between. So, in the aftermath of Flutschfinger and Nase discussing this on their stream, the accusation gets sent to the Podlust podcast and Slash. And the question is what this is about. Addressing this because Slash is the team manager. I will play this little snippet once again. It's in German. And then I will translate it and then we'll talk about it.
So, und für Starbuck meinte, also ich war da selber auch casten, ich war nicht dabei, ich habe das im Nachhinein auch nur so gehört, was da wohl vorgefallen sein soll. Und da hat Starbuck dann irgendwie gesagt, Junge, ich brauche ein 2-0, für dich geht's um nichts mehr. Wie sieht's aus, kriegen wir das irgendwie hin? So, und Scars hat darauf geantwortet, nee, wir machen hier nichts, wir spielen normal durch.
Ja, diese Situation.
Ja, genau. So. Und also da wurde vorher wohl, er hat es wohl angesprochen, ob man dieses Match fixen sollte oder nicht, was nicht stattgefunden hat. Scars hat ja auch die Map dann geholt, wodurch Starbuck dann nicht qualifiziert ist. Also ich glaube, das ist das Thema, was da angesprochen wird.
Ja, kann sein.
Alright, so, obviously I'll try to stay as faithful as possible to the wording in the podcast clip. If I made some mistakes here and there, you'll see. So, quote, Starbuck allegedly said, and I was casting at that time, so I wasn't around myself. I heard what allegedly happened. So Starbuck apparently said, boy, meaning Scars, I need a 2-0. The tournament is over for you anyway. What's up? Can we get it done? And Scars replies, we don't do anything regarding a fixed outcome. We just play the match the normal way. So Starbuck allegedly mentioned to Scars if they can get Starbuck's desired outcome or not. That didn't happen. Stars did get the map, so Starbuck didn't advance. So I guess that's what Flutschfinger and Nase talked about. This is also what X-Lord is referencing in his initial tweet. And oh boy, does that sound bad. But let's talk about the believability of the clip and maybe also a bit of the podcast and Slash as a whole. Because as much as I was a fan in the very beginning, I stopped listening to this podcast some time ago. While the creators of this podcast have very good intentions, especially within the past couple of weeks and months, there were many mistakes in their reporting and very, very little journalistic due diligence. I have some examples from the top of my head. It was reported that Twitch wants a 70-30 split from streamers with 70 going to Twitch, which is nonsense. It was also multiple times reported that Razor Moon is the player Bolt the Kodo or FPXY, which is just not true. There were several mistakes in reporting about ESL Germany when it comes to standings, possible outcomes of group stages, etc., etc. So lots of wrong information in that podcast in general. Then Slash says at the very beginning that it's only hearsay. He wasn't there. He heard it. Here we have to raise the question, from whom? Also, we kind of got a question if Slash's memories from Raraland are that intact. It was half a year ago. It was very stressful, and there was a lot of talk and bragging about excessive alcohol consumption in previous episodes. This entire thing is unscripted, so was it unintended wording? I don't know. It sounds super bad. And he makes it sound as more or less that he heard that this definitely happened that way. But I would say, and we'll get some follow-ups on that later, the credibility of the podcast is at the very least questionable. So just because one person, and that is Slash, reports that he heard that this is what happened doesn't necessarily mean that this is exactly what happened. Even though, of course, you should think that a team manager is a good source. So, how do Nase and Flutschfinger know this? This is now a lot of background information and context. In early 2023, some players of the Playing Ducks think about parting the team and try to explore better options. There was a presentation created. They were looking for offers, basically. I know that Scars was definitely part of that development and actively involved. At the same time, the team Raptor Gaming disbands, and one member of that team, Dark, wanted to create or starts the idea to create a team himself for the remaining time of Warcraft 3 and also for Stormgate. This is what later becomes the Phantom Aces, and since Dark and Starbuck get along very well, Starbuck is very involved very early on. From what I know, Slash is initially involved in that new presentation that Scars is also part of, but then becomes part of what will become the Phantom Aces relatively soon. And while discussing what other players to pick up, here apparently Starbuck doesn't want Scars to be part of that new team. Scars figures this out relatively late, that Phantom Aces is building without him. Feels a little betrayed. There's word going around of Slash leaving Scars behind. The alleged reasons are later revealed that Starbuck doesn't see Scars as a team player and not enough teamship. These reasons and motives later gets relayed from Slash to Scars as the mentioned reasoning for why Scars is not part of the team. There is, from my knowledge and what was reported to me, no direct conversation from Starbuck to Scars at that time. And while you can draw a conclusion that Starbuck doesn't see Scars as not a team player because he didn't give him the map, this is later. We can kind of show that this is not true. We'll get into this in a little bit. Scars, obviously, a little bit disappointed, angry, whatever. Takes it to the German community. Other players that gets left behind from playing ducks and playing ducklings join in on the conversation, and there's a lot of talk in the German community about Slash leaving Scars behind, etc., etc. And at the same time, the first leaks of the new team appear, that they're called Phantom Aces, etc. So this is talk of the town, basically. Reportedly, when Scars explained to others why he's not part of that team, Scars allegedly used the word matchfixing and says something like that in the talks to the German community. It is reported to me that Scars at the time acts relatively heated and emotional, and here we can maybe raise the question of what people call matchfixing. Is it Starbuck came to him and said, hey, can we get this done, as Slash suggests? Or did Starbuck just assume that because they're on the same team, they have some sort of team order, like in Formula One? I'm not sure. What was said to me and what Scars said to me is that when he used the term matchfixing, he always made clear in the same context that there was never an active offer or that he was never pressured into something. That is what was reported to me. So this gets a lot of momentum since, as I reported before, Slash is to many people an antagonist in the German community. People don't like him, and people find it, or people like to harp on him, jump on him. And again, the leaving Scars behind thing becomes more vocal. This is factually incorrect. That Slash wants to leave Scars behind, as we will see later. Because Slash still tries to get Scars on the team despite everything. At that time, when all of this happens, and this is now personal Neo speaking, Scars reached out to me and wanted to talk. But I failed to respond properly to that. The call never happens. I could have been informed over this long time ago, but due to stress, some personal stuff, I never did. So another blame on me, and Scars, I'm sorry, you know it. So when talking about this time frame, which is more or less in the dark, to be honest, because there's no presented evidence or logs, there is allegedly a rumor that people think, you see how careful I am wording this, there is allegedly a rumor that Scars threatened to publicize the Matchfix allegation to pressure his way into the team Phantom Aces. Here is my opinion. That seems way out of character for Scars. And to be honest, if you're part of the team because of a threat, that's kind of, yeah, this is not the kind of team that I see Scars in, to be honest. Especially if other people of that team allegedly tried to pressure you into an inconvenient situation. And since this was already discussed more or less freely within some parts of the German community, it's at least semi-public already. So what's the real threat? I think this is pretty much nonsense to make one of the very few judgment calls in this. So this was a little summary of why some people were in the discussion and in the know to a degree. And this is why Nasen Flutschfinger talked about this, why Slash himself then got confronted with it, and why Xlord brought it up on Twitter. In the thread of Xlord, a German player called Sunny, who was also part of Playing Ducks, was part of ESL Germany, responds. Sunny has, for a while, a bad relationship with Slash, as far as I know. And he presents some screenshots of a conversation between Slash and Starbuck. These screenshots are legit. So let's take a look real quick about this conversation. Slash says, "Hey man, can we talk about Scars? This is all..." well, let's go through it. "I don't feel comfortable to leave him behind. I mean, I totally get your point and you definitely have it right, but Scars is young, he does mistakes. If I talk to him about what happened, he would apologize and understand what we are about. You think there's an option to get him on board? I did not talk to him yet. I wanted to talk to you first." Starbuck responds, "Honestly, I'm pretty strong where I stand regarding him at the moment. I mean, I mentored this guy when he was still a 2K MMR orc, and I taught him and showed him around the ropes. And it's not only the weird Raraland thing, it's other stuff as well, e.g. the fact that he signs up to Twin Trophy Cup with a guy like Xlord, which says enough about team play or teamship together. Since this is a serious project, when filtering correct people to the team, I can't give my blessing." It's followed up with a second screenshot. "Actions speak loud," coming from Starbuck. "Actions speak louder than words. All I can say, it's not what you say, but what you do." Slash then responds, "So would it make sense to talk to him about what happened? Maybe he realized it and will come and talk to you. Or do you say that bridge is burned?" To which Starbuck responds, Well, only me is irrelevant. I'm not the only one against it, so it doesn't really matter." Okay, let's go through this. Slash says Starbuck is right in his beliefs and says maybe he realizes his mistakes. This raises the question, what is Starbuck right at? What are his beliefs? What are the mistake? This also raises a bit of the question, is Slash really of the opinion? Or is he talking in a condescending way to appear like he's on Starbuck's side to relieve some pressure of that conversation and get a better talk to Starbuck? Like, is it condescending or is it real? Starbuck mentioned that he's the mentor, or he sees himself as some kind of a mentor of Scars. A key thing here, in my opinion, is that weird Raraland thing, which we don't know what that is. We can only speculate what that is. And he mentions that tagging with Xlord is against teamship. And in case you didn't know, Xlord and Starbuck have a lot of beef for a while. We'll get into this later and we will describe it. What people currently don't know is that part of that conversation is missing. Because I looked at the screenshots and it was brought to my attention by another person that the first screenshot is a lot shorter, is a lot bigger than the second one. And it's also kind of odd behavior that Starbuck says something at 1927 and then 8 minutes later responds to himself. So I reached out and asked people, is there more to this? Is there something missing? And turns out there is something missing. And that is the following. You can see here, people to the team, I can't give my blessing. That is the end of what Starbuck wrote. This is the time where Starbuck responded for the second time. In between the two Starbuck messages, Slash sent something in response to the Scars and X-Lord team for the Twin Trophy tournament. He said, that was just a joke. We were on Discord and Ido says we will look for a German team as a contender to Twin Trophy to get the most viewers from my stream, but there's no real strong German team. Then Scars says, okay, I will ask the Lord. It was a fun thing to trigger Ido, knowing he will not accept the sign up of X-Lord. Have you talked to him, Scars, about what happened in Raraland afterwards? Because if I'm in voice with him, he is still of high meaning of you. He's still talking about you as a mentor. That is the full conversation. So I don't want to accuse anybody of doctoring stuff. We don't know what happened with the screenshots that Sunny eventually posted between the conversation and when they ended up on Sunny's Discord. So I reached out again to Scars saying, yo, this is some information that wasn't discussed before. Do you know any of this? And Scars said to me, well, this wasn't a joke, and it was not my intent to trigger anybody. Scars likes 2 and 2, and usually he plays with Starbuck, who was signed up with Krav already. He plays with Leon, who was in team with Ido, and he plays with Ido, who is part with the tag team with Leon. Because Ido played with Leon at Raraland when Scars was still playing the Rcadia World Series group stage. So Scars has a solid relationship with X-Lord. He thought, hey, that might be a good team. So the fact that Slash displays the X-Lord Scars thing as a joke supports the theory that Slash is using this condescending language and tries to lure Starbuck into talking to Scars. And it turns out that if Scars is correct here, that Slash is straight up lying. This still leaves some questions when looking at the conversation leaks. What is the weird Raraland thing? Is it the fact that Scars took a map when Starbuck needed the 2-0? Or did something else happen, aka circumstances? This is something Scars mentions later. Does Slash really mean what he says? Can he be believed? Is he trustworthy? And what is he even addressing? Plus, is his wording condescending or not? Let's go. The aftermath of the match between Scars and Starbuck at Raraland. According to the Sunny Leaks, once again paraphrasing, Starbuck doesn't see Scars as a team player because he has a relationship with X-Lord. Reportedly, about the tournament Rcadia World Series, Starbuck took this competition very seriously, had high expectation, but also he got pretty sick at the time and had a stomach bug. So, prior to the match, this is all reports, so I will use the word reportedly and allegedly quite a bit. Prior to the match, there's delays. So, as I mentioned before, the last matches of that round-robin group stage were supposed to be played at the same time, as it is, for example, in football at the last play day. But that wasn't the case due to delays. This was an orga mistake. But reportedly, previously to the match, Scars pretty hyped about that match, really wants to play it. Sit in the chair, let's go. After the match, or shortly after the match, at some point, Starbuck disappears for a while. Is that due to the result of personal feelings, because of he's feeling sick? We don't know. What we do know is that game 3 of that series had to be paused because Starbuck felt sick. Reportedly, after the match, Starbuck went downstairs, got soup and tea, and then left. It is a little bit unclear if he returns later or not. At that time, Starbuck is reportedly not in a good mood. He's eliminated, upset about the result, plus affected by stomach issues. Also reportedly, Starbuck's status and mood was talked about by a couple of people at Raraland, also with Scars. But Scars at that point seems unfazed by the events, is having a good evening. And here, I personally raise the question, if your teammate and reported mentor is approaching you prior to a match and is trying to force you into match fixing, and then disappeared in a more or less grumpy mood, would you have that good of an evening? Would you present yourself in a good mood, or is there something in the back of the head that influences you when you know that the friendship is probably damaged or that there's something in between you? So that is my question that I raise about that behavior at the time. Reportedly, other people, neutral people, at the event were a little bit surprised about the result too, because it doesn't happen that often that one teammate kicks out another. And it was discussed. Most people were amused by that fact. The opinion was that Scars did nothing wrong. Obviously, he played his best, took a map. The topic disappeared quite quickly and wasn't talked about it anymore. Reportedly, after the match, or sometime after the match, Scars hung out with X-Lord and some other German players after the games. It's kind of rare that we all see each other, even though we play each other in Meisterschaft all the time. And allegedly, Starbuck didn't really like that. This feeling then later intensifies in 2023 when X-Lord and Scars sign up together for the 2-2 King of the Hill Twin Trophy. This is what was discussed in the Sunny Leaks. So, one day after X-Lord posts this to Twitter, Scars responds on Twitter with his own version of what happens. And we'll, of course, look into this as well. Pepe rolled on Durant, Scars Warcraft 3. Since the last episode of Potlust, the impression was made that I was declining a match fix offer by Starbuck or / at the Rcadia World Series. That does not reflect the truth at all. There was no kind of offer about match fixing or manipulating the tournament in any way. I just played my best as versus any other opponent, and that's what Starbuck expected as well. Our relationship was strained as competition and the results got in the way of our friendship for a period of time based on the disappointment of the circumstances. In the end, we talked it out and everything is fine. I'm very happy to work with Starbuck on our project Team Phantom Aces. Here also, his version gets backed up by a neutral observer who was at the event. I remember talking to you at Raraland before that match and you said the same, no harm or foul play. Obviously, this can also be taken with a grain of salt, because would you tell a viewer that you just got a match fix offer? I don't know. Probably not, but there you go. So, this is where the circumstances are mentioned for the first time. It's also mentioned the first time that there's at the moment no problems with them anymore. So is Scar's connection to X-Lord the circumstances? This would also be the or backed up by the parts of the chat of the leaks that was missing up until today. This raises the question, why is X-Lord such a factor? Well, there's quite a feud between him and Starbuck. This dates back to DreamHack days, which is a long time ago, actually. Both personally dislike each other. This is not a one-way street. This goes both ways. X-Lord constantly mocks the no more lames, and Starbuck's behavior in general. For example, Starbuck's constant talk of like positive thoughts, raise your mind, etc. Just very different people in that regard, I guess. X-Lord, you probably know this, loves to cause some trouble on socials and some streams. He did similar things to Todd in the past. Earlier this year, he was constantly poking fun at Starbuck on Twitter when he was high up in the ELO ranks, saying, where's Starbuck in this ranks? Where's the race abuser? The copy of Razorman was mentioned. And at some point, Starbuck responds to this by saying, good to see I'm still living in your head rent-free every night. I bet I'm competing with that lovely Hamburg Raraland crowd cheering against their home player, Big Yikes, versus a Korean Sock. Time to do some self-reflection and make up for that time lost skipping puberty. While X-Lord has a history of causing some Twitter controversy, he also has a solid history of standing up for fair competition, and this shall absolutely be mentioned too. This is not the first time that he's raising his voice publicly or privately for fairness and his beliefs. For example, there was an ESL Meisterschaftsfinal planned offline, but at some point it was brought to the attention that Todd would play from home. So X-Lord raised that issue, called this out, and then the finals, like every player was treated the same and we all played the finals from home. But it's clear these guys don't like each other. And if X-Lord is talking about Starbuck, there is a clear bias. That is also one of the two facts that these guys don't like each other. So, not too much happens. In the middle of all this, I was absent for a few days. So my investigation also stopped for a few days. And X-Lord, I called X-Lord when he published the first tweet and we talked it out. And I said, I'm going to investigate this, yada, yada. X-Lord gave me quite some time, but since I was at a festival and pretty exhausted afterwards, I couldn't deliver results as fast as I would. And then X-Lord followed up with a second post. And of course, this is something we have to discuss as well. So, while in the first tweet, this was just pure text allegations and referencing of other media, in the second tweet, X-Lord is putting together some analysis and interpretation. My current thoughts, 3 screenshots about the situation about around the match fixing from Starbuck, at Back to Warcraft, at War3 Champions, etc. I have waited for all comments. It's about the thesis that Starbuck was match fixing the tournament Arcadia World Series, aka Raraland. My elaboration, basically putting one and one together, will be based on the following primary information. That is the Scars tweet that we discussed, and there is the leaked Sunny conversation between Slash and Starbuck. You see here that one part of the conversation is missing, so when X-Lord discusses this, he has no knowledge about the part that was missing that I displayed right now. So let's see. We can already see that wording is a little odd, as he puts this as Slash CEO Super and Batman of Phantom Aces, and Starbuck is, certain bias is shining through indeed. But let's put this aside. He's dissecting Scar's Twitter or tweet, and puts on a cross reference to Starbuck's comments. For example, here, and it's not the weird. It's not only the weird Raraland thing, ... which says enough about team play or teamship together. So first of all, there is missing that the second part of that sentence is about X-Lord, and the way X-Lord puts this together makes it look like Starbuck is connecting team play and teamship to the weird Raraland thing, when the team play or teamship was more connected to Scars playing with X-Lord. So this is a little influential, I guess. But yeah, X-Lord is of course clearly not aware of some parts that are missing. In total, the actions speak louder than words doesn't reference a map loss as it's stated here, but it's discussing Scars playing with X-Lord in that 2-on-2. So far, so clear, I guess. So, also in the middle of the attention is Scar's sentence that says, I just played my best as versus any other opponent, and that's what Starbuck expected as well. So, in the second part here, it continues. Obviously, however, Starbuck didn't expect Scars to try so hard in their match and take a map from him that these actions map win by Scars. And I think by now it's relatively clear that the actions are more related to the 2-on-2 and not the map speak louder than words. So this part here in the middle is misleading, if I get this right. So the sentence, obviously Starbuck didn't expect Scars to try so hard in their match and take a map. This is an interpretation, which is probably also wrong. To put a different spin on this, Starbuck could also expect a 2-0 when Scars is trying his hardest, because he never lost the map against him before. But this is kind of a centerpiece in this entire thing now. Let's put up 3 different possible cases. Let's say, what if there was attempted match fixing, as was the accusation at the very beginning? Let's say Starbuck did ask Scars before if he gives him the 2-0 win, but Scars refused that, as suggested by Slash. Then Starbuck should expect Scars to play his best because he turned down the match fixing. But then obviously it is attempted match fixing. Scars was right about Starbuck's expectations. X-Lord was wrong about Starbuck expectations. And it doesn't really match with Scars' behavior prior to the match, as it was reported that Scars was pretty hyped about that match. Would you be hyped about that match if, there's standing something between you? I don't know. Then, if there was an attempted match fix, Starbuck's behavior towards Scars afterwards can be explained to a degree if he knew that this result was possible and is still mad about the outcome and possibly whatever happened later. But if that all happened that way, Scars being unfazed at the end of the day at the party doesn't really fit that behavior if one of your best friends just attempted to match fix you and then acts weirdly towards you. So this is not really reasonable and it's not really logic. Let's put up a second case. What if there was no attempted match fixing and we expect Starbuck did not ask Scars before if he gives him the 2-0. Then he can expect Scars to play a normal game. He could also expect himself to win 2-0 because he sees himself as the stronger player. He beat him before without losing a map, and it is Scars' weakest matchup in Orc versus Night Elf. then it's obviously not an attempted match fix. This matches with Scar's behavior prior to the match because there's nothing that could influence him. Then Scars is right about Starbuck's expectations to play to the fullest, and X-Lord is wrong about Starbuck's expectations to expect less than the best. Starbuck's behavior towards Scars afterwards can be explained to a degree if you look at this from the more human perspective. It's personal disappointment, it's a little bit of projection because he didn't achieve the expected outcome and something possibly happened afterwards that day. It would also be normal that Scars behaved unfazed afterwards because from his perspective, nothing wrong is up. But what if there was no active attempted match fixing from Starbuck towards Scars, but Starbuck was expecting or hoping that Scars would just help a teammate out and not play his best without ever voicing or suggesting it? Which is basically a little bit similar to Formula 1, cycling, racing, etc. Then it is not really attempted match fixing, obviously, but it's quite a bit of unethical thinking by Starbuck that an opponent in a tournament would not play his best because it helps a teammate. This would match with Scar's behavior prior to the match because he was never approached. Then Scars is wrong about Starbuck's expectations that Scars plays his best, but he doesn't know that because it was never discussed, so Scars isn't lying in his tweet. And also, X-Lord is right about Starbuck's expectations, because then it would be just quietly in Starbuck's head that, hey, he's a teammate, it will all be fine. Starbuck's behavior is also then kind of understandable with the disappointment in mind, but it's a little self-centered, as you can't really expect just because you think, well, he's my teammate, this will work out, that the opposite player in a one-on-one environment is also thinking that. Because you don't, you can't expect that other people just think like you, plus a possible aftermath could influence Starbuck there as well. And also, as before, Scar's unfazed behavior at the bar later is normal, since he doesn't know what Starbuck's expectations and hopes at the time are, because this was never mentioned to him. That's the three opportunities, I guess. Nothing is perfectly reasonable or logic. It could be just the match. It could be the match plus circumstances, as Scars mentions. There's weird things that happens at LANs, everybody. Between two people that usually only know each other from the internet, and then all of a sudden they're in a real life environment. A lot of stuff can happen. Maybe we are reading too much into this and it was just, I don't know, bad wording. Everything is pretty vague, and a lot of that is speculation and interpretation. So I am a little bit against this conclusion by X-Lord as this is put together. Of course, he also says this doesn't prove any match fixing before the match, but this is leading to the loss of all credibility of Scars, since his Twitter statement was probably forced by the Phantom Aces. Meanwhile, he got picked up by the team. I'm not too sure if you can draw that conclusion. It can, of course, be interpreted that way. But as I said, just because Scars says that Starbuck is expecting Scars to play his best, and Exo doesn't believe that, doesn't really lead to the loss of all credibility. Scars could, in the right circumstances, just believe that Starbuck thought that way. Again, Scars could have believed that Starbuck expects Scars best, and then he tweeted it even though Starbuck didn't, but Scars never knew it. Then it wouldn't lead to a loss of credibility, then it's just lack of knowledge at the time. So, Also, addressing this with a little bit of whataboutism, it also kind of contradicts X-Lord, who is basing some of the facts on Slash's statements, who in the beginning says it's hearsay and has a long history of reporting false facts as truth in the past. Does this also negate all the credibility of Slash? Can you then build anything on Slash? You know, this goes vice versa. God, this is so complicated. Where did we end up? There are voices of different people. This is what Slash refers to in his last podcast. Scars spread the information he couldn't join Phantom Aces at first because he didn't let Starbuck win with the 2-0, aka match-fixing. Truth is also supported by Sunny's leak about the discussion between Starbuck and Slash. So, once again, this is a little manipulative, I would say. But it's also an interesting part. Because obviously, Scars did talk to a lot of people in his time between playing Ducks and Phantom Aces. This is also probably where Flutch and Nase got it from. That is a time frame that is a little bit in the dark. But what we don't know is, who are the voices that X-Lord mentions? Are they credible? And since there's no public record of this, we can't dissect it. We can't analyze it. We don't have any conversations between Scars and people outside of playing decks of or Phantom Aces, like the Rocket Beans community, etc. There's also no logs between a possible conversation between Scars, Starbuck, Slash. So we can't dissect them either. This is just projection and speculation. Also, you know, a little biased here. Because he says, wait, where is it? Truth is also supported by Sunny's leak, and we kinda already established that the wording regarding the Sunny leaks is off. This also, because he says he can't join Phantom Aces at first because he didn't let Starbuck win 2-0, aka match-fixing. That's a quote without a source, really. It's really hard to judge how to treat this. If this is true, though, if that's the case, this kind of supports the thesis that there was no active match-fixing attempt in the beginning, because reportedly Scars is pretty angry about that at the time, and if he knew that this result was an issue before, and the match-fixing thing stands between them, he wouldn't have been so disappointed and angry at the time, but rather before, and he would knew that this is an issue. According to Scars, he loosely used the word match-fixing indeed in talks with other people, but also mentioned additionally in that context that there was never an offer and it was never suggested to him by Starbuck. So, since this is mentioned in private conversations, it could just be careless wording, lack of a better word, or a different interpretation of the word match-fixing. Or at least no differentiation between active match-fixing attempts and Starbuck expecting a 2-0. And this is also an issue that has been done in the past 2 weeks in the community when discussing this controversy. The word match-fixing is floating around very, very loosely, and yeah, not sure if it's always used correctly. Also, in that time frame where Scars is talking a lot to other people, to like reportedly, Scars is talking to Slash, only to Slash. And he gets information relayed by Slash. There's no direct talk between Scars and Starbuck. So since we established the believability of Slash before, we can obviously also question if Scars received the right information until he later talks with Starbuck directly when Slash is not the middleman. So Scars could be missing information onto why Starbuck was mad at him. Slash could have made misleading statements towards Scars as he did before with Starbuck. And once Scars talks to Starbuck directly, the relationship is fixed and the issue is out of the way. So this is something we also have to think about and that we have to keep in mind. And also, where does this continue? Xlord says, in my opinion, Scar's statement can't be used as evidence by Phantom Aces that Starbuck didn't try to fix the match. However, based on the outcome, it can be determined that such game manipulation was ultimately unsuccessful, which can at least be positively attributed to Scars. So this makes it sound like the game manipulation was ultimately unsuccessful, quite manipulative as it states this as a fact. But he's also talking about evidence. And in this case, as I said before, there is very little evidence and very little is for sure. Sure, Xlord could be right, and Scar's Twitter statement is worded that way because it's biased and it's supposed to protect the team. It could also very well be that Xlord's interpretation of the whole thing, knowingly or not, could just be subconsciously, is biased to put Starbuck in a bad light because they have a feud. Xlord's wording in this entire screenshot and the one that follows is pretty manipulative, and he presents things as facts that are allegations. This is a little careless, obviously. And also, we're basing a lot of this on hearsay reporting by Slash and possible condescending language by Slash that could just be wrong. So all of this is super vague and lots of speculation. There is very little hard evidence except the result. And there, of course, Xlord is right that at the very least, a possible attempted match fix was unsuccessful. That is correct. It goes on with the conversation between Slash and Starbuck. Here, disclaimer, Xlord possibly didn't know that the leaks of Sunny don't contain other parts of the conversation that are not part of it. What he does do is call Slash again CEO, COE, Super, and Batman of the Phantom Aces. This is clearly tainted wording. This is discrediting Slash, who is one of his sources and part of his argumentation. So it's kind of obvious that Xlord doesn't seem to have a high opinion of Slash as well. And it's oftentimes pointed towards that weird Rara Land thing, which we really don't know what it is. And I agree there that it would be nice to know what it is. But Xlord before said that connected that weird Rara Land thing to the match when that is speculation. So we talked about that a little bit before. There's one thing though, where Xlord is fabricating a quote, which is pretty misleading and something one shouldn't do. As, quote, he took a map from me, that's why he doesn't fit our team. Credit by Xlord. So even though he puts a sign next to it, that is very misleading to the neutral viewer. And as we pointed out before, that is also false in the whole context of the conversation. So implementing that fabricated quote, not that great. So since Xlord is constructing a theory what happened here, I take the freedom of doing that myself. And I hope that can be portrayed separately from the other stuff I present. So one possible explanation after all we've heard here. Starbuck why was he so mad? He's coming to the tournament, high expectations, wants to go into the playoffs and beyond. Then he gets sick in a foreign country. He can't play his best. The tournament doesn't go as planned. He's eliminated. Eliminated pretty much by a teammate, your student. He kicks you out when he has nothing to gain. Starbuck's disappointed, feeling bad physically, feeling down mentally. And then he goes downstairs, trying to grab a tea, soup, whatever. And he sees his teammate, his friend, having a good time with his foe, X-Lord. And, of course, the other people that are in that group as well. So, being disappointed of your own performance, plus the behavior of a friend, could very, very well explain an unreasonable grudge that was also never really addressed between the two. Because, as we learned, Slash was a little bit of a middleman between them. That is big speculation by me, but would explain something. 1 hour, 5 minutes, goddamn. Where did we end up? X-Lord mentions before that both feel that Scars made such a big mistake at Raraland that he doesn't fit into the new team. That is wrong. Slash, from what we know, want Scars on the team at all times. X-Lord also says... Yep, we're on that slide now. That this behavior shows the true colors of positive vibes only team leader Starbuck. Very manipulative wording. And that also kind of raises a question. Like, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about real match fixing attempts? Are we talking about lack of self-reflection from Starbuck? Are we talking about emotions? Are we talking about ethics? Since everything is so vague and so much speculation again, it feels like we kind of lose the way of what we're actually talking about. X-Lord then continues to mention we can't prove any beforehand match fixing. That is correct. He mentions Scar's sudden change of his opinion about the situation surrounding the Starbuck match fixing allegations. We're not really sure what time frame X-Lord is mentioning here. So what we do know is that there were no direct talks between Scars and Starbuck when Scars was talking to other people in the community. We know that there was talk between Scars and Starbuck between then and now. The change of opinion and wording doesn't really have to be sudden, as X-Lord portrays it, but could just be a result of a talk within that time frame. So we don't have any public sources or a time frame of that former opinion, so it's really hard to comment on that. X-Lord then mentions unsportsmanship intentions. I think this is only true if Starbuck really expected Scars to lose the match 0-2, with Scars not playing his best. That's the except active match fixing, that's the only possibility where this would be unsportsmanship. Then he mentions fish stinks from the head, and he is addressing Slash, which is clearly true here if you look at the behavior and statements of the self-appointed CEO and team captain of the Phantom Aces. Slash, we discussed Slash extensively. I think we have to question him. Obviously, he said what he said. Wording or how he said it was obviously in a way that you could definitely believe it. But as I said, he made a lot of mistakes in the past 6 months. That also, to a degree, caused a divide within the German scene that we're seeing now. So yeah, was he really of that opinion that you should let a team member advance? But if that's so important to him, and he really feels that it's such a mistake, does it make sense that he still wants Scars on the team then? When he said that Starbuck is right. Everything about Slash's statements is a little bit questionable. And I don't think we can take his actions and statements at face value because of the false reporting in the past, because of a possible condescending language towards Starbuck, and he's been calling out for lies by Scars. So he's really not that trustworthy in this entire conversation. In the meanwhile, by the way, Slash left the team, stopped the podcast. He mentioned health reasons and mistakes. We wish him all the best. But yeah, Slash is off the team Phantom Aces. So the way it stands and the way it was said, 100% bad look, I agree. But yeah, a lot of that started this chain of events, no question. I do question if we can take Slash's quotes at face value. This leads us away from Axlord to another, and we're almost finished, guys, to Starbuck, who finally said something himself. He replies to Axlord's second tweet, didn't even read. Always been, am a legit player with principles. Real recognizes real. If you're this obsessed with me and salty, I don't see how that's my problem. Hate is in you, your body. I suggest meditating and raising consciousness. Good luck. So, this raises a couple of questions. What's the principles? Is it play every match to the fullest, or is it teammates first when you're eliminated already? What are the principles? In this tweet, nothing is addressed, nothing is cleared up, and nothing was corrected. Mind you, not even the leaked screenshots by Sunny are addressed. Kinda odd. So given this is Starbuck's first response to this, I would say that if people read this, it makes people believe Axlord more instead of ignoring the claims and allegations. So this tweet backfired hard in the public eye. Okay, we're at the finish line, guys. This was all very serious. This was all very vague. Want to hear a funny thing? This all for nothing. Because if we look at the standings of that group, even with the 2-0, nothing would have changed at all. So let's take this. As we explained before, if like Starbuck currently is 1 point behind Sock, if Starbuck wins 2-0, he also has 8 points because he gets one more. Then obviously there's a tiebreaker. There's an even standing between Sock and Starbuck, both with 8 points. But Starbuck then has a map score of 6-6. Sock has 6-5. So this is better. Sock also has one more match win than Starbuck by 3-2. So there's no metric in a tiebreaker that would put Starbuck ahead. No outcome of any match between Starbuck and Scars would have changed anything about the fact that Sock advances and Starbuck does not. This all for nothing. Whatever happened and whatever caused this, I don't know who informed the players or if it was incomplete information at the time, but they were in wrong belief if they thought Starbuck advances with a 2-0. So, lessons from this. Finish line again. Lessons from this. Never put matches between teammates at the end of a round robin. Show more sensitivity for red flags. Especially me, with some controversy in the past. And talking things out apparently helps a lot. There are still some open questions, though. The questions. Can you take Slash's comments at face value with the wording that he used? And is he evidence? What is Scars' definition of matchfixing that he used, reportedly, between the time of playing Ducks and Phantom Aces. Did Starbuck expect a 2-0 because he expected to be able to achieve that as he did before, but ultimately failed at that? Plus a possible aftermath in the hotel lobby, bar, whatever. Then it's a personal problem when Starbuck is projecting his failure a little bit to Scars and something else happened. Or did he silently expect a teammate to lose on purpose for him to advance? Then it's indeed an ethical problem that needs to be addressed. Then there's also some questions open, which are kinda personal thing maybe. What's the weird Raraland thing that made Starbuck mad at Scars? What are the circumstances that Scars mentioned? And eventually, if you're curious, what solved these problems eventually? So, in my opinion, and this is the summary of it all now, the presented accusations and allegations aren't enough to punish the player for the accused actions. A lot of it, like there's super little evidence at the time of recording. There's a lot of speculation, interpretation, also interpretation written out of context and or based on missing information. Like the missing part of the conversation that is not part of the Sunny Leaks, but X-Lord references the Sunny Leaks. This was a stressful week with a lot of talks between people. It was very good that this was addressed. This doesn't prove anything, but maybe it helps clearing this up. I hope so. I appreciate every single one who spent their time with me trying to clear this up as best as we can. Obviously, if anyone has any more information, evidence, facts, reports about the topic, we have open eyes, we have open ears, and if necessary, we will reopen this investigation. But for the time being, not enough evidence, and yeah, as I said. Thank you for watching, everybody. This was a long one. Take care.